Yeah, I'm ready.
Yeah, we're ready to
I
go.
am super excited to listen to you guys. I've had the pleasure of working with Wesley and Wesley for quite some time now, a couple of years, and Salvi just recently in the last 6 or 8 months or so. These folks are passionate about when talking about mental health. So I am not going to take away from anything from what you've got to say. I will let you guys introduce yourself and go from there. Thanks, gents.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mike. Yeah, as Mike said, this is Wesley Jones and myself. My name is Salvi Cammarata. Coming to you live from downtown Edmonton. We're on the 6th floor of the public library, the main branch. I am a suicide attempt survivor. I'm a survivor of 20 years. I've lived in Edmonton all my life. I currently work with the Imagine Institute for Learning. I do so as a project manager and a training facilitator. And our organization works throughout Alberta, providing professional development training opportunities in the human services sector. And part of my facilitation with Imagine includes suicide prevention training. Specifically, that's QPR, or in other words, question, persuade, refer. Been doing that for 4 years. And I also sit on a suicide attempt survivor subcommittee for the peer working group here in Edmonton. Wesley.
Thanks, Salvi. I'm also on the peer working group, and Salvi and I have a number of things in common. I also work with Imagine Institute. I'm also a suicide attempt survivor and a suicide prevention advocate. On my part-time, I've tried to help start support groups for people who've attempted suicide, and I've helped develop courses for people who've attempted to help them recover and develop skills. And that's me.
Awesome. So what we thought we'd do tonight is we're just gonna have a chat. We're gonna have a conversation. There's no slides to present. It's just basically live and unplugged. And so we put together some questions we're gonna ask ourselves. For the most part, we'll answer from both our perspectives. Our first question is, has your suicide attempt made you more resilient or more fragile? Wes?
I would say that my attempt made me more fragile. Down the road, it contributed to adjusting my life in a way that made me more resilient. I had to go into therapy. I had to look after myself. I had to go see a doctor and start talking to my family doctor about my mental health. So in the long-term sense, it contributed positively, but definitely at the time, it made me more fragile. I developed PTSD after my attempt, both from the attempt and from my unpleasant hospitalization experience, which resulted in a lot of nightmares, withdrawing from my family, becoming really sensitive to different triggers. I had to avoid loud noises, lots of things like that. So it really affected my ability to be in the world and be who I wanted to be. What were you saying?
Me, that's a tough question. Giving it some thought, I think for me, it's both. It's given me some resiliency for sure, but also I find myself still fragile. Before I go further, I just want to give credits to my wife, Lynn, for posing this question. So it was her idea. Very good question. The reason I say resilience is I've had 2 attempts in my life and many years of suicidal thoughts, but I'm still here. I'm still pushing forward, still plugging away. So I've had my periods of anguish or languishing in terms of the mental health spectrum, but I'm still here. And for right now, I'm good. I also say I'm still fragile because I mean, knowing a lot about suicide in my experience, like I am at a risk because 1, I'm male, 2, because of the age I'm at in life, my mental illness. So I have bipolar disorder. And if you know about suicide, if you've had previous attempts, you're also at higher risk. So that's why I say I'm fragile.
Okay, our second question is, what is something that kept you safe?
No, hard to pinpoint. I mean, I guess the easy answer for me is, knowing what to do, knowing what the warning signs are, knowing where to go if you're looking for help, knowing who to talk to. I guess, what is your safety net? Just finding out who's out there for you and taking advantage of that fact. Wes?
I found it really hard to feel safe after my attempt. If you like give a talk like this, you're like, do I trust myself to perform well? Do I trust myself to speak properly? Do I trust myself to be like warm and inviting? But it's really a hard thing when you're like, do I trust myself not to take my own life at a certain point? Like, how do I make plans? Because I don't know if my brain's going to turn on me and try and take me out of the game. So the thing that kind of helped me work towards feeling safe was therapy and group therapy. I attended group therapy at the U of A weekly for, I think, like 3.5 years with a young adults group. And it was so important to be around people my age who had also just attempted like fairly recently. Like I walked in thinking I'm going to be the only guy here who's here for suicide. And there were like 4 other people out of the like 7 or 8 that we started with who had attempted within a month of coming to that group. So it was really helpful for me to be able to talk to someone who'd been through the same thing and who was still here. Because really at that point in my life, it was every day was a surprise when I woke up in the morning and I was still here. So knowing that somebody had made it like a whole month, it's not just a month, like that was incredible. It's like, wow, you've been here for so long. Like, how are you still doing it? And that made me feel like maybe I had a bit of a chance. I could make it at least as long as they did.
Our next question is, have the reactions of people, things that they may have said or things that they may have done, have they hindered your recovery in any way?
Yes. That's my answer.
How so?
Well, especially immediately after my attempt. So after I attempted, I was hospitalized at the Alberta Hospital Edmonton for 2 weeks-ish. And one thing that was not helpful for me was that the person I initially reached out to during my attempt, who ended up calling the police and saving me, sort of cut me out of their life and was like, hey, because of this thing that you just did, we should go our separate ways and not speak ever again. And I consider myself fairly close to them. So that was quite hard for me. Coming out of the hospital and coming home and trying to explain to my family what I'd been through when they had no idea that I had even been suicidal or like where it came from or anything like that. That was really hard to feel like I was able to share about it. And when I was in the hospital, my work called me 3 or 4 times. Hey, when are you getting out? How do you know when you're getting better? When are you going to be back at work? I got in trouble because I didn't pre-book this time off. They're like, we should have told us this was going to happen, so we could have given you some days, but you're going to get fired now because you've missed too many days at your seasonal job. And thankfully my boss stood up for me and it didn't happen, but it really pushed me and I sort of rushed my way out of the hospital because I was so stressed out about that perfectionistic part of myself, not having a summer job or seeing it through to the end. So just leaving the hospital early, not getting the help that I needed, and like rushing back to work really affected my ability to take the time I needed for myself. What you saying?
I mean, yeah, the way people acted around me or reacted certainly didn't help. I really like what Greg Kettner said, the earlier presenter, on how to approach things that are often taboo about talking about things. But I have an interesting story where when I was, after my first attempt, I was hospitalized as well for quite some time, and I threw my parents for a loop. They didn't know what to do, so they thought, hey, why don't we just bring in our Catholic priest and maybe see what he has to say. And I'm not knocking what my parents did. I mean, they didn't know what to do. They did it from a place of love, but I'll never forget the priest coming into the room and just basically, I don't know. I don't want to get into too much of it, but it wasn't helpful. There was no empathy there whatsoever. And just to get that reaction from a priest was very harmful to me. So I'll just leave it at that. The one thing I do want to say also about the reactions of people, sometimes, and in my case, I project what people are thinking, you know, and I suffer from a self-stigma as well, like, you know, ooh, mental health, ooh, suicides, you can't do that, blah blah blah, you're bad. For me, a lot of that self-thinking was about, you know, the shame, the embarrassment of it all, and just the, you know, I was kind of denying what I was going through. And so, you know, I was projecting what I thought people were reacting to as well. So I want to mention that too.
Okay, our next question is, what is something that gave you hope?
I don't know, I guess a lot of things. Well, right after the temp, you don't realize at first, it takes a while. You know, there was, for me, it was, you know, realizing my diagnosis, my mental health condition, and then dealing with that, you know, psychologically and by pharmaceutical means and group therapy. So like I said, at first, there wasn't really much hope, but after a while, I learned to appreciate things. I learned to appreciate life. I learned to appreciate loved ones. They certainly helped me along the way. I didn't see it at first, and perhaps I didn't want to see it. But lastly, I just want to say my perseverance. My wife keeps telling me that I'm the most resilient person she's ever met. And I like to think of it that way. I'm very resilient.
I'd say you are.
Thank you.
For my journey, it was more about getting along with hope. You know, when I first started going to therapy and, you know, shared a little bit with my family and friends about it, they were all about that, you know, woo, you can do it, like, get better, you can improve, get back to being you, you know, we want the old you back. And then it always just made me feel like crap when I couldn't find that hope. You know, it was like months and months of therapy and I wasn't hopeful. I was like, well, I don't see it's not getting better. I don't see how I'm ever going to get better. Like, this is never going to end and I'm going to die eventually. And just learning that you can be completely hopeless, but still move forwards. You know, it's like, you don't have to expect that tomorrow's going to be bad, but you can still try and make it to it tomorrow. And whether that's because you feel like your suffering has a point because you're still trying, whether you don't want to let down the people around you, you know, whether you just want to see how tough you are and how far you can make it. Like, you don't always have to assume that there's going to be a positive day tomorrow in order to try. So the thing that really helped me just get through sort of without that hope was my individual therapist. I started seeing her maybe like 6 months after I attempted, and just knowing that I only had a certain window that I had to survive. You know, it wasn't like you attempted and now here's the rest of your life. It was like, you attempt, here's the 2 weeks until your next appointment, and then when that finishes you have 2 more weeks. So it kept things very manageable and like not overwhelming because I didn't have to worry about all of this future ahead of me. So hope was like, I used to say hope was a luxury that I didn't have time to have, and now I'm almost like hope was a stressor that I didn't have the capacity to deal with. So I live my life without hope, and now that I'm a little more resilient, I can have some hope in there because it fits better.
Awesome. I think we have room for one more.
Sure.
We were just going to talk about what people should know about suicide prevention. And I guess I'll start. In the QPR training that we facilitate, we learn that most suicidal people will tend not to self-refer. So they won't actively seek help themselves. However, if help is offered to them, more times than not, they will accept that help. So that is somewhat reassuring. Something you might add to that?
Yeah, I've got 2 quick ones I'll fire out there. One is people are often like, well, they told me they were okay. We made plans for next weekend or something, and then they did it. I don't understand. And research has shown that often it's only 5 or 10 minutes where people have decided that they're going to attempt to when they actually attempting. So it's not that they've like lied to you and they've tricked you and they're going around it behind your back. It's just that like they didn't know, or they genuinely thought they were fine. And people who agree to like seek help and things like that, you can't always rely on that person, because a lot of the stuff that we do is, here, we'll give you this safety plan and you go fix yourself. If you are in trouble, you access this help. But it always assumes we're talking to the right part of the person, you know, like someone who's extremely suicidal, your brain is like tearing itself in half. And you can't assume that you're always talking to the part that wants to live, because maybe you're talking to the that wants to die, and the part that live is still there, but it's not over 50%, you know, it's not the one running the train.
Yeah. So how are we doing for time, Mike?
Oh, we're pretty much done, gents. So Wesley, you're in a booth in the expo, because there's a lot of questions. One of the things that I think I will do also is I will collect questions from folks, and then we can collate them afterwards and maybe put out like something in writing, or maybe I'll do a video of you guys answering those questions that we can circulate to all of the attendees. Because yeah, that, like, it's just so powerful listening to real stories. This isn't textbook stuff. This is real life, and this is where change happens. So thank you guys so much for being brave enough and having the courage to share your journey. I am so grateful that I get the opportunity to work with you guys, and I am looking forward to a lot more work with you guys. But I think, yeah, friends, if you want to drop some questions, I will make sure that I collect those and have Wesley and Salvi either answer those on text, like in writing, or perhaps I'll come down to the library and we'll do a little video shoot and circulate that out to the attendees after, because I think there's a lot of important stuff here we weren't able to get to. All right, gents. So anything in conclusion, any resources you want to share?
I just wanted to say that if anyone does want to reach out to any one of us, we both are here at Imagine Institute. Our website is www.imagineinstitute.ca, and we're both on LinkedIn, so you can also get a hold of us that way.
Yeah, and I know for sure, I saw, Wesley, you've got your LinkedIn on your little profile, on your speaker profile. Salvi, I'm sure you do as well. So look through the People tab. You should be able to find Wesley and Salvi and connect with them that way. All right, friends, I'm sorry this is so tight. Who would have thought? We were trying to get everything in so we didn't have to pick and choose, but we're making it a little tight. All right, friends, I will see you in the next session starting pretty much right away. Thanks again, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
See you.